So we are in the middle of Patchwork City Farms.
Yes.
Emphasis on city because we are literally in the midst of not only a neighborhood, but it's only a couple minutes outside of downtown Atlanta. So you've got planes, you've got cars, you've got all types of things. But I think it's so awesome that you built this farm here. So you were telling me a little bit about your upbringing and how, when you thought you were going to retire and get a farm, that was the thing, but it happened earlier.
It happened much earlier. It happened much earlier because raising my family here in Southwest Atlanta, just food options were horrible.
Yeah.
There was nothing but corner stores, liquor stores, and I grew up eating healthy. Like my parents that was just such a big part of my upbringing. And so I just was like, I'm gonna start a small community garden. And I started with some other people and it just became this thing that I did all the time.
I love that.
And just kind of never looked back.
I love that. So this is your third farm experience, and you were telling me before that you own this one. So how important was it to, get this land to own it? What's the difference between like leasing and owning?
So initially when I started, I was leasing land. I actually was leasing land from Atlanta Public School at a middle school. And so we had an acre, we were working with the kids. But what has happened, as has been the trend kind of across the country, gentrification was happening. Because it was public land, people felt like that land would be better suited for something else. And so it just became a very unstable situation to operate a farm on land you don't own, and I found myself needing to move the farm in 30 days. So I transitioned to another location. That didn't work out. That was with a nonprofit. So I said, if I'm gonna be able to do this in the city and have it long term and really be a solution, I have to have control of it. And you gotta own it. So did a Google search and I found this property. I live 5 minutes away. It's around the corner from my old farm.
Wow.
Like it just was
perfect.
It was perfect.
And how much land are we sitting on right now?
Yeah, so we're sitting on 1.2 acres, and then I expanded to a lot that's essentially adjacent to me. And so collectively, an acre and a half.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah.
An acre and a half.
An acre and a half.
And all that you can create in the midst of your own city, I think is incredible. And I hope other people watching are like, yo, I want to create something.
Right.
Like, let me find a patch of land, own it, work it, cultivate it, and bring it to life.
Absolutely.
And so, urban farming, speaking of, is just so important. And we see gardens and community gardens popping up. We see community farms popping up. But why is it so critical to achieving a healthy economy? Why is urban farming so critical to making sure that we do have healthy foods in our neighborhoods?
Yeah, I think for me, urban farming is critical because it shows people what it looks like, how your food is grown, that engagement, that interaction, and then you're there in the community where people need it. And so your food is fresher, it's more nutritious. It's not having, I operate my farm very sustainably, so all organically grown, everything like that. And I think it just really brings that awareness of agriculture to the urban community, which is most of what rural America grows for the city, for the most part. And I think people develop an appreciation and hopefully it brings awareness in a way where people can support those larger issues where, most of the food is produced in the rural areas, but urban farming helps to bridge that gap between the city and in the rural communities.
I love that. I think that's so dope. So do you sell like every weekend? Like how can people come here and buy?
And so I operate the farm. Me and my team, we operate as a team of 4, and we're here sun up, sundown, hot, cold. And we go to market. So we do 2 farmers market here in the city of Atlanta. We go to on Saturdays. We do sales to local restaurants. And then I also have a nonprofit that I partnered with here in the neighborhood. And I donate produce to like 30 families, mainly seniors in this community. Because this community is a lot of seniors. And the sad thing is you find out seniors are one of the most food insecure people in our communities, which is just like
scary.
Horrible.
It's really sad to think about.
It's really sad.
It's true. People, unfortunately.
They're on fixed incomes, they're not working anymore as you should. You should be able to retire. And they just are very limited with food dollars.
And it's our responsibility as the legacy of these people who built these communities to make sure that they're good. So I love that you have that in fact we are going to visit some elders later, which I think is so dope. So shout out to our elders. When we think about farming and even the history of our people in this country, we are not new to cultivating the land. I mean, if we think about the 400 years of slavery, the fact that we built this for free, like this land is such a part of our legacy. So when we think about farming now in 2023, does it help to honor and reclaim that legacy when we farm? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Like a big part of sort of my ethos in explaining to people is like, this is not just growing food, but it is reclaiming that. It is reclaiming that legacy, that knowledge, that know-how, and I'm in control here. You know what I mean? Like, this is my farm. So all of the negative aspects of our legacy in this country around farming is not the land. The land didn't do it to you. You know, it's not nature. It's not the food. It was the situation. You know what I mean? It was that it was done, you know, forced slavery. So there's still that beautiful connection. And even after slavery, I mean, you still had over 1 million Black farmers that still were like, this is my passion. This is what I wanted to do. And unfortunately, you know, that legacy was attacked even after that, to where we're now maybe 30,000 Black farmers. But you see a rise of people trying to come back to the land. And so it's important.
30,000 Black farmers in this country? That is staggeringly low.
Staggeringly low because, like, right after slavery and during the Jim Crow, I mean, there was almost 1 million Black farmers owning over 50 million acres of land. And it is significantly less than that now. And so you see a resurgence, myself, a bunch of other young people who are like really trying to come back to that and trying to repair that history and that legacy. Because in talking to seniors, I mean, they're still very much connected to the pain. And so I come across people where they're like, I just don't want
to be there.
I don't want to be there because it's too painful. And so it is on us, this younger generation, to kind of reclaim that, to bring it back, because it's the health of ourselves, our communities, our environment, and the world we live in.
That's such a beautiful point. And I'm thankful that you brought up the part about the seniors, because I can only imagine, like, the history, the reality is there is a lot of trauma.
Yeah, there's a lot of trauma
represented when you are riding past open stretches of land. Like, when I always think, like, dang, when my ancestors were probably out, like 400 years ago, what would it look like when I rode past here? And even, you know, DNA is carried on. Trauma is in our DNA. So on our podcast side, we talked to Samantha from Urban Finest Farms in North Carolina. And she was saying how much healing property there is in just grounding yourself in the land.
Absolutely.
Like, how important is that to not just healing the trauma, but reclaiming our part in this world.
Our part in this world, our knowledge, our legacy that was, you know, we were brought here because of the information that we had and our ability to cultivate. And understanding that relationship, like, it's not extractive. Like, I'm not out here like, oh, what can I extract from this land? It really is a relationship. It's a, you know, it's a cycle, and there's a rhythm to it, you know, and you have to honor that, you know, and just be with that. And I think it becomes a rhythm for your life, you know, that just tells you, you know, slow down, be adaptable, just, you know, take it in. Sitting here, I mean, I become thankful for so many small things, like the breeze today. It's so hot, but like when you're working and you get a breeze, you're just like, thank you.
Thank you.
You know what I mean? Like, when rain comes after it's been dry for a long time, you're like really thankful. There's a lot of things you don't take for granted anymore.
Wow.
And I think, you know, that permeates into our lives, you know, when we have that relationship. And everybody doesn't have to have a farm. You don't have to have a garden, but, you know, cultivate something.
Yeah. So as we walk through the farm later, I'm gonna ask, because I have no green thumb. So y'all gonna try to get some tips for us. Those of us who do not have a green thumb.
Absolutely.
Now, and let's go back to how agriculture serves as a solution for community empowerment. And we talked about in the beginning of this conversation how we are used to corner stores and liquor stores and convenience stores being in our neighborhoods more than we are open stretches of land.
Yeah.
So how does having city farms, patchwork city farms, but more of these across the country help to empower our community and aid in ending hunger?
Yeah. And so for me, starting the farm was the first purpose was about like fresh food where it's needed, right? And being that resource within the community where people can access fresh food, where people can engage with, where people can learn. So we have volunteers, we do like workshops, and just have, different engagements on the farm. And so that's super important to kind of like draw that connection and also be, like I said, a place where people can actually purchase produce. Across the nation, I think it's, urban ag, like I said, serves as that sort of that portal to what agriculture on a larger scale looks like, feels like, the work, how, like value, putting a face to who your farmer is. Because I think if you go into any school, classroom, just in general, people think farmer. They're like, white man.
Yes. With a pitchfork.
Right, with a pitchfork. And it's so not what it is. And in my opportunity to even travel internationally, most farm work is done by women globally. And it's people of color around the world that are growing food. And food that we eat is grown by small farmers. 80% of the food that we eat globally is grown by small farms. Big farms grow commodity crops. And so our attention is just like focused on the wrong thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So while 1.2 acres, 1.5 acres here in Atlanta is not gonna serve Atlanta, but there are 30 urban farms in Atlanta. And the biggest one is like 7 acres. Some are just as small as a small house lot. So I'm one of many, and most of us are Black.
Yeah.
And half of us are women. And so I think we're just sort of like reclaiming our rightful place, cultivating, growing, taking care, nurturing our communities through food and through farming.
I love that. This conversation makes me so happy because we interview all types of people on this show, from social justice leaders, civil rights leaders, business owners, and I think we all have a passion and a place and a calling to serve each other as a larger community. We have our business leaders. We have held the highest office in the world, all those things. But when we think of how everybody still needs to eat fresh food in order to show up as who they need to be. It helps to have a Black farmer cultivating the land, like showing us how to do it, and at least taking care of our food.
Yeah.
That.